welcome back to A.R. Tales, aka the A.R.T. podcast. I am A.R. and today we are joined by a fellow Dominican brother, a sci-fi aficionado, Nico Pengin. How are you doing today? Way too excited for this conversation. I actually just spoke to him on the podcast. He co-hosts Penpodcast. He is a comic book creator, Batey, 3 volumes on Amazon right now. He had Sci-Fi. He does the podcast. I mean, even look at the logo he has for himself. It's unending. The artistry, the creativity, and the conversation that we had already just lets me know that what we're about to have now is about to be legendary. So without any further ado, Nico, say hi to the people.
Yo, that was good. I was like, yo, who is he talking to? Is this his room? Who is he talking? Oh, me? Oh, well, thank you. Never heard an introduction like that before. Thank you. I appreciate it.
No, thank you. Thank you for coming on. You know, we do this so often and just like talk to like different people. It's awesome for all the episodes, all the people that I've talked to, I promise you, 2 of them have been Dominican.
Oh,
and
wow.
of those 2, one of them has been a sci-fi writer and Dominican. So this is one of one, first time on the podcast if you really think about it. Even though we've spoken to so many sci-fi, but I think that is one of my favorite things about this whole genre. Is that like we're getting different ethnicities finally up in the foreground, and who knows how much that can change. Wakanda was the first time I ever saw people of my skin color messing around.
That's why I let my dreads grow. I saw the movie. I was like, we could do that with our hair?
Yeah.
What? Like, I could do that? And then people were like, yeah, Dominicans have been doing that for generations. I was like, what? Was it hidden underneath all that racism? Like, what?
No, my favorite thing is trying to explain to my friends or like people that like don't like are getting to know me, don't know me that crazy well yet. There's the whole thing of like because of my skin tone, they just like assume that I have like white hair, and it's like no, son, that's not how things work here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I wish it was like that. Like my hair it's just afro. It's like as a kid, I remember that vividly. I wanted quote unquote white kid hair so bad.
Good hair.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it fell down, you know? And when they would go like that, it would stay like that. You know what I mean?
And the slow motion and the TV and the movie
always,
and the protagonist always had that hair.
Yeah.
Like all the girls were always just like, oh my gosh, I love the way the hair just slow mo's in the air. And it's like, my hair doesn't do that. You pour water and my hair just like absorbs the water like and it just stays dry. Just absorbs the water and just stays dry.
It's like that joke, which I never noticed it was that racist until later on, but it was like in that movie Yumi and Irene with like Jim Carrey. It's like he's like a dad and he has 3 black kids because his like wife cheated on him and then left them, so he just like stayed with the 3 black kids, and he's there, but he loves them all the same. So he's there like grilling one time, and like a friend of him walks up to him and goes like, so the water just beads off the hair, huh? Like talking about the kids, and it was just like Jesus, Jesus. And it was one of those things. I laughed because like I understood what they were talking about. It wasn't until years later that I was like, oh wait a minute, that's us. You know, I'll put that down in my book somewhere. I'll find it somebody.
Yeah. Blatantly out there.
Well, that's one thing that I wanted to ask first off. To like now get into like the gritty. You know, I'll put my suit on in a second. Get my tie on. But how do you treat being Dominican and being a writer? I gotta say, up until recently, it's when I started really kind of confounding those ideas. I never thought about it in that sense, you know?
I mean, honestly, I never had a correlation from one to another until I started to tell people that I write and I'm Dominican. And they were like, oh, you know, this and that, and you know, you should be doing this or it should be looking like that. And I would say I guess I'm ignorant in regards to, you know, Dominican writers and the previous individuals who were great writers, because I wasn't given that information. Like, you know, no me dieron esa información. I was just in the dark until somebody told me about this thing called a Dominican Writers. And I just recently found out. I don't know if you know about it, but I just found out about it. Like, there's this organization that they pretty much foster Dominicans who write. And they literally have tools and resources. Tienen concursos. They have contests. It's online. It's like, I think, a free membership. You sign up for it, like a newsletter, and sometimes they'll send some sort of event, and they'll say, hey, the first 100 people that submit something to us will either consider you for publication, or we'll give you like tips and tricks about how you can improve your writing. And that was last year, and I didn't pay too much attention to it until recently. They had one for Mother's Day, and I just missed out on that. And I was like, oh man, I should have checked sooner. And then they had one for Father's Day, and luckily I actually submitted a writing because they were asking, like, stories about your dad and how he impacted you in a positive way and in a negative way. Because sometimes people say, yeah, my dad's amazing 100% of the time. It's like, okay, you're lying. Come on now. Especially if you had a Dominican father, like, tú sabes eso corretazo, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, come on.
You know what I'm saying? And so, like, I submitted my work and they actually approved it, and they're actually in work of getting it published. And I was like, oh my goodness. I never thought in, like, ever that I would, one, be an author, because I always held author at the highest level above everybody else. I thought being an author meant you were a genius. You were super smart. And whenever I heard Dominican, I didn't think super smart. I always thought resourcefulness. Somebody that's
Exactly.
always using what's at their disposal to make
Finesse it.
exactly. They just make things work, like an engineer. Like, oh, you have this little thing, and I need to, do something amazing with it. I'm a figure it out. Not that I'm going to actually be the absolute best at my craft. And so when I saw this organization that they're specifically helping Dominicans become the best writers that they can possibly be, and now that they're actually going to publish my work, not under Nico Pengin, but they're actually going to publish my work, I said, wow, I never would have figured that I would have a shot. And now that I'm doing sci-fi and I'm creating audiobooks, I'm creating comics, I'm creating experiences for individuals to, be able to embrace their skin tone, be able to embrace their hair, their texture, what they sound like, their nose not being pointed and straight, like all these things that I never would have said, 10 years ago. Like, yeah, I could definitely be a writer. I would have been like, no, that's blasphemy. There's no way you could be as good as insert all these amazing authors. There's
Yeah.
no way. I never would. I would have said, nah, you're lying. There's no way I would write. I'm not good enough. But now look at me now. I'm writing. I'm on a podcast show. I'm on a podcast by a Dominican for Dominicans, where yesterday, I was the host and you were the guest. And it's like, what? I never would have thought of that. Like, stuff like that would have happened. Like,
Ah, that is beautiful, huh?
we're Dominican writers in sci-fi, where you already know there's not that much representation in skin tone,
Yeah, you know it.
less alone country representation. Like, are you kidding me?
God, I mean, honestly, it's just something that I almost like kind of zoned out to as you were saying things. All the famous Spanish writers that I know are exactly that, Spanish writers. You ever think about that? Their notoriety just becomes from, I can't say just because they're obviously masters in their craft, but it comes from being Spanish. It's not from, you know, I can't think of any times that I've like nerded out over a writer in Comic Con that was even close to my skin color or like anywhere near my country on a map. Maybe if these type of things can continue, and I'll be honest with you, I never understood how like that type of thing can like change immediately, but like evidently it does. And we're seeing it like all the time now. That like that little things like that. The picture of I was in London when like the girls won the cup for women's soccer.
Mm-hmm.
And I was listening to like the radio calls of like little girls calling and being like, oh yeah, I'm gonna start playing soccer like this year, football this year. You know what I mean? It was just like it's that immediate.
Right.
It's like before there was like a certain time for like a 4-minute mile, and they scientifically believe that was the limit of human capacity. Humans cannot go faster than this. Somebody broke it, and they thought this person was like an alien. Then
Right.
1 week after it was announced that it was broken, it got broken again, then again, and again, and again. All you need to do is see that that was possible. And
Right.
hopefully in the future, there's not gonna my kid's not gonna be looking at a white kid talking about like, man, I wish I can do that thing with my hair. They're gonna be happy about
Yeah.
their hair. They're gonna be happy that when they go like that, it just goes right back to position. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. Right.
Oh my god! But taking that idea with the culture, right, and kind of like how that blended for you, especially with into sci-fi. How did it start? What was the first sci-fi? Not just what got into sci-fi, but the first time that I was like, oh wait, this isn't the genre that I want to read about, watch. I want to create this. This is so insane what these writers, what these movie makers are able to do with this genre. I have to try it now.
I mean, honestly, it was during the pandemic,
Mm.
being locked inside. You honestly have only your thoughts to really be bouncing back and forth. And there was this movie, I don't know if you've heard of Alita Battle Angel.
Yeah,
And so I was watching
made by
Alita.
a Mexican bro. My God, Rodriguez. He literally made Spy Kids.
So I was watching the movie, and it was towards the end of the film where she's already spoiler if you haven't seen Alita battling like right now, just like fast forward it to 5 minutes. So it was towards the end of the film when Alita is pretty much told that everybody in the line is out to kill her, and she had a choice to drop out and to fight. And I was thinking, I was like, I've always valued or overvalued authors to a point where I saw them as like really high up. And she was like, no, I'm gonna fight. I know it's death. I know I'm gonna fail. I know I'm not gonna be the best at this, but I gotta give it a shot. And that entire time, that from that moment up until like she points the sword at the like rich people or whatever, that entire time I was thinking that. But the moment she grabbed the ball, I immediately thought like, wait a minute, Dominicans, we have a sport that we actually used to play with a ball. Like I remember I saw that somewhere. And then she grabs the ball and she smashes it with on somebody's head, and she's like doing all this stuff, and everybody around me is like, wow, that's amazing. And that entire time I'm watching that scene, I'm like, wait a minute, we had a sport just like that with a ball just like that, and we competed. I don't remember the name of the sport. I don't remember much, but I know we had that. And I'm watching now this amazing and new futuristic game, and in that entire time, it was like within a span of like 5 or 10 minutes, however long that scene was, from the start of the her race up until she points the sword at the people. That entire time, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, Dominicans, we had a sport. Not like that, but we had a sport with the ball, and there was a circle, and we were competing, and I don't remember, and I was so hungry in that moment. I was desiring, what is this sport, and why don't we have a mixture of this technology with our Dominican heritage? Because
Mm.
this is a good concept, but I was like, the Dominican in me was like, espérate, yo tengo algo mejor. Wait a minute now. Like we had, and then boom, the moment that movie was done, I just got so engrossed in absorbing all that information of what we had as Dominicans hundreds of years ago during Columbus, pre-Columbus, and I just started researching. And then I saw that Columbus, well, not necessarily Columbus, but one of the people that wrote for Columbus, like, a journalist or whatever, described that the Taino Indians, which were the Caribbean people at the time, they had this little ball where it was the first time that it was known, supposedly, that rubber existed. And it wasn't in Europe, it wasn't in Africa, it wasn't in China and Asia. No, it was in the island, Hispaniola. They had a rubber ball, and very similar to how basketball and soccer, hacky sack, and all these sports combined. And I'm like, oh my goodness, we actually had a sport. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, if I add the concept of Alita Battle Angel with the concept of Batey, the game that was during Columbus's time before obviously we got extinct, or
Mm.
they wiped out or tried to wipe out, except the ones that stayed in the mountains,
Mm.
when I saw that connection right there, I said, oh my goodness, I could be that writer that bridges that gap from, this is only, a sport for, 400, 500, 600 years ago. I said, no, 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 no. If I add that suit to that sport and I put that sport in a sphere where there is absolutely no gravity and they have jet boots on their feet where they can fly really quickly and they don't use their hands, it's essentially like space soccer, but the concept derived from Batey because they didn't let the ball touch the ground at all whatsoever. The whole point was to keep the ball up and then try to get it into your opponent's net. And I was like, oh my goodness, I need to write this stuff down. And I remember telling my family, and they're like, yeah, whatever. But then I just got to work. I started writing, and I kept writing, and I kept writing. And I was like, oh my goodness, I think other people should know about this story. And I told one person, and they're like, oh yeah, that's an amazing story. When's the book coming out? And they said it jokingly. And I was like, what do you mean? It's like, I mean, the way you're saying it's a story. And this story isn't a 10-minute conversation. No, this is a story that you want to take your time reading it through. You want to read it from beginning, middle to end. And I said, wait, so you think I should create a story? They're like, yeah, you should definitely create a story. And I was like, man, I didn't even think about that. I was just thinking about this new futuristic sport. And I'm like, no, but of course it's a cool concept. But if you create a story with it, then people might really get behind it. And I was like, whoa, this is gonna be good. And that's literally where my inspiration for the Batey series, Batey Ascending, that's literally where it came from. Just but watching Alita Battle Angel and mixing in all these different ideologies about who we are as Dominicans, and in the future we never know if we could develop any of this technology. And it was just so intriguing. And I said, I need to be the first one to write this because I don't want anybody else in the future to be, oh, this is a great this and that. And me being, oh my goodness, I had that as an idea, but I never did it. And I didn't want to be that guy to say, hey, I thought about that first a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
I could have been that one. I could have been that one. Nah, I wanted to make sure that I wrote it down. It's not as good as your stories. It's not as good as the way you drew it. I know that for a fact because your stuff is like.
Oh, you're talking about me? I think you're talking about like the French you. Hey, relax.
No, yeah, your stuff yesterday. I was like, whoa, like I'm nowhere near your level. But I was like, I need to get this out because this is the sport. This could be made into a reality. And I just needed to make sure that I penned it, I published it, I used my gamer tag. Like I used Nico Pengin for all of my gamers. And then somebody was like, why did you use yourself as the main protagonist? And I said, that's the protagonist for now. You don't know where the story is going to develop. And, book 2, I'm not the same. Nico Pengin is not the same protagonist in book 2, 3, 4, etc. So I got that idea just watching somebody else's concept, futuristic mindset plus sport, and the underlying theme of being suppressed and being used for entertainment purposes only from Alita. Like there were so many layers, and I was like, I need to be the one to do that.
Oh my God. I love it. And what we're talking about right now is Batey. It is literally his comic series. It is out now. Amazon. Nico Pengin. Just all the links will be at the bottom. The website. Make sure to go to the website. It's awesome. It has all the links, the different podcasts, the different books, everything that he's doing. Sobre me, about me. I actually loved how you had like the little like differentiation between English and Spanish. It's like little things like that. It's like, man, yeah, I'm Dominican. I gotta like show that off a little bit more. You know what I mean?
No, I had to do that because I have family in DR, and when you have family in DR, they're always asking like,
about me. ¿Qué eso?
yeah, they're always trying to figure out like, what are you doing? You try to explain it to them. It's like, hey, you remember seeing Harry Potter? It's like, no, I don't. What is this Harry Potter? It's like, what is this Quidditch? Like, well, it's like I can't use Harry Potter and Quidditch. It's like, Alita. It's like, what is this Alita? And it's like, okay, so they're gonna have a hard time understanding everything I say and everything I do if I keep it strictly English. But if I make sure that the content that I produce also has at least some sort of a Spanish translation or explanation, then at least my family can understand that their tradition, their culture from the mainland is not going to go away. I'm not going to forget, anything about where I came from and who I am as a person simply because I'm not there 24/7. And by enabling them to have that connection to my website and understanding the brand, the story, and everything else that goes along with me, they can also at least be aware that they have a potential, maybe not now, but in the future, something that might be something that they can connect to, maybe a sport, maybe an animation. I have no idea where this leads me, but I want to make sure that they have an opportunity to also enjoy what I have to offer.
My God, I love that. Now, what do you think is the future of your writing? Now that you have kind of like these things like on the go, you started up, you have like your idea, you have like this beautiful kind of concept, inspiration, then like you know, I loved what we talked about yesterday because it was like
Mhm.
the whole idea of like, it doesn't necessarily have to be a thing of like you knew forever that you wanted to be a writer as much of it was just like a need, right? It's like what I was
Right.
talking about yesterday. I feel like you have like
Mhm.
that same energy where it was like it wasn't a thing that you were sitting back like, all right, what is this book that I'm gonna write? It just came to you. It was like the Greek god muse, like the muse. You know what I mean? And you just got hit by it, and you just had to, what are you gonna do? It's like a gun to your head. What are you gonna do? You're gonna let it float away, or you're gonna put it down, and you put it down. So now that you've been bit by the bug, you have like
Mhm.
everything going down. You have the comic books going. What do you think you want to progress on into? Especially now they're getting published. I mean, it's just the beginning.
No, yeah. Before I just wanted to simply get the story out, and so my mindset was to simply get it out, and then my mindset was get it out in Spanish so my family can also see, and then my mindset was, well, what about the people who can't see? I was like, okay, so then I can do the audiobook. And I love Marvel. And I was thinking, one of my favorite things about Marvel is the fact that their soundtracks just amplify every emotional scene.
Yes.
And I was like, with the audiobook, I can make this into a cinema. I can't even say the word cinematography kind of
Cinematic.
cinematic. There we go. See, this is what you're here for. The cinematic, a cinematic experience, because the sad moments, I want a sad music. The hype moments, I want a thrilling music. And once I had that down, somebody came to me and they said, hey, since you're doing the English and Spanish ebook, and now you just did English and Spanish audiobook for both sides, they're like, when's the comic coming? And I was like, what do you mean? I was like, well, we know that you love anime. We know you love manga. We know you love comics and cartoons. So we know where this is going. And I said, well, I don't know about where you think this is going because I'm constrained by a budget, and the
Yeah.
budget says no. They're like, how much do you think it actually costs to do this? And yada yada
Wow.
yada. And I was like, man, you're making me think about stuff I wasn't ready to have a conversation on. And when I started that comic, I said, you know, I really want to take my time developing it. And so I created chapter one, I created chapter two and three. I haven't published chapter two and three because the moment that as you mentioned, I got hit by the bug about publishing, I'm like going 1,000 miles an hour and I'm barely thinking. And I got a mentor slash a consultant who's giving me so much advice about what I should actually be focusing on,
Mm.
and in regards to developing the brand, in regards to developing the story. And like, how in anime sometimes you see some animes that they surpass the manga, and then at some point there has to be some sort of like a break, and everybody's like, oh no, curses, like, curse you, author, why did you have to not finish the story? We want more of this. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm gonna come to a point where that might happen. And so what my mentor slash consultant was saying, you could do that, or you could make sure that you have your foundations laid out first, have everything developed, so that way all that's left is to finish the story. And I was like, I never thought about it like that, because I'm always thinking light years ahead. I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about that. And so right now, my current goal slash mission is to create a foundation similar to how you mentioned yesterday that you took 7 years or so in creating your foundation of story, your this, your that. And I was like, man, I never had that amount of thinking. I just had like simple stuff like, boom, this connected to this connected to this. I need to create the story. And then as I progressed, people kept asking me more questions and more questions. And I'm like, man, I don't have answers to these questions. It's like, wow, you guys have all these amazing questions that I wish I knew the answer to as an author. I was like, I need to go back to the drawing board. Like I was working on book 3 and book 4, and I was working on chapter 4, 5, and 6 of the comic. And people kept asking me, well, what about this? Or what about this? I was like, wow, those are really valid points. And I'm like, man, I can't believe all my beta readers missed this and all my proofreaders missed this. Like, they're not asking this, but the people that are actually reading it, that actually engage, they're giving me feedback like, hey, what about this person? What about that? What about this small little itsy bitsy thing? And the moment somebody brings something to my attention, I'm connecting dots. I'm saying, whoa, if I would have known that at this time, I would have done this and this and this of the story. I was like, dang, should I redo the whole story? Should I redo everything? I was like, no, no, no. Like, don't redo everything. Don't rethink the wheel. Just focus on refining the wheel. Make the wheel a little bit better. So that way, once I connect it to the axle, it can get the vehicle moving where it needs to go.
Exactly. And you know what's actually really weird? It's I just heard this recently, and there's very, very few times I like uh seek motivational stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it was actually Stephen Yoon, which was like I love. He's like the guy. He was in The Walking Dead, which I actually wasn't a huge fan of, but he was like he was in Nope, and he actually played like the main character in Invincible, like the
Mm-hmm.
Amazon animation thing about superheroes. And he was talking about that at like basically different stages of his career, and he said something that I've been thinking about a lot, and it made me think of like what you were just talking about with the whole thing with the wheel, and what homie said, and it literally just got burned forever in my mind. It was such like an interesting concept. He said that whatever boat you took to get to that phase, you can't take with you when you get to the next one. And you always
Ooh.
have that initial like thing of like, oh well, I built this, I gotta bring it with me, but it's like you can't. You know
Right.
what I mean? It's like the next phase of waters are way rougher. Like you gotta let that go. You gotta, if anything, you gotta scrap that down and to build the next one. But that's
Mm-hmm.
not coming with you.
Right. Right.
So like that's kind of the thing. Like as I was saying, it's like with the wheel analogy. Maybe that wheel, like the refinement is like is as like perfectly circle as you want it.
Mm-hmm.
But the next one will be. That
Mm.
one's just enough to get you to that first phase, right? And
Oh,
exactly.
yes.
And then you keep on going by the time that by the fifth car, you're over here on the you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
I can apply a little nitro, you know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
And for me, the nitro is going to be just marketing, but I'm so focused now on making sure that I could develop everything thoroughly and making sure that if somebody does have a question, that now I have enough of a foundation built in the story that those questions that now I can either answer with ease or I'm more than happy to welcome it. Because before I was so scared, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I don't know this. Like, I need to think about this because I don't want to just give them a random answer. I just don't want to say, like, oh, this is what happens, or this is what happened, or this and that. Now I got to think, like, okay, what would make sense, or what would this character do in that situation? Because I really don't know, and I have to engage with the individual. I have to engage with that character because I think that the characters are their own individuals. I think that they have their own thoughts, their own thinking patterns, they have their own way of life. And I'm just there interviewing them and making sure that whoever asks that question, whoever really wants to know that information, that they can have that because it wasn't out of me. I had to consult with them individually, like, hey, Nico, why would you do this or why wouldn't you do that or what led you to want to play this amazing futuristic sport? And I was like, man, I got to come up with a good background for this character and for this one based off of the feedback I got from this first story. And it's like one thing just leads to the other, and it's literally a learning process for me because I didn't know, like, nobody teaches you like this is how to be an author, this is what you want to do to avoid all these mistakes. It's like you simply learn as you go, and you could decide to be hard-headed and a Dominican and be like, I know what I'm doing.
Exactly.
Or you could be like, you know what, I'm Dominican and I want to make sure that I put out what I deem the best of what I have to offer. So that way, anytime I'm quizzed and I'm being grilled, I can answer with the confidence I know that I've earned because I've put in that work.
Damn. Okay. Okay. Damn. Okay. Damn. I really like that. It's funny. Like honestly, I got to bring it back to like my mom. My mom, mommy gave me the best. And for you non-Spanish people out there, Mami is like how we say it. Like I remember growing up as a kid, like I'll be like, oh my mommy, and they'll be like, oh, you still call your mom mommy, and it's like, yeah, I'm not Mommy.
Yo,
All right,
that used to irk me too.
you know what I mean? For us, it's forever, dog. My brother. Anyway, I don't know why. I'm telling you, it's like I was back at the playground. I was like, "Hey man, Beyblades now. We can hash this
Oh, I used
out.
to love that. I used to love that.
Yu-Gi-Oh, what's up?"
Yeah,
But
same.
but she used to say, because like when I would go and complain about school and whatnot, homegirl would say, "Listen, you don't go to school to find out what you want. You go to school to find out what you don't want. You just go and study the things. When you're in math and you realize you don't like math, all right, you check one off, right? When you're in science and you don't like science, you check one off, right? When you look at your teachers, what they're doing, does it look like that's a good job for you? You can check that off, right? Literally, it's just processing over years and years to see what you don't want. And I treat this process the same way, you know,
Wow.
like I really don't know what the shot is that's actually gonna hit, but I know that when I shoot that way, it doesn't hit. It's like, all right, well, it's not that one. And eventually, I will keep narrowing down until like the mark is hit. But
Right.
all you can do is just aim for what is just go. If it doesn't work, I'll say, all right, well, we know that's it, and just you keep on going. I think that's like the best thing that I've realized in this process. Now, for you, if you were to give advice to like somebody out there that maybe is you from 1 year backwards, you from while you were watching, you were watching the first 5 minutes of Alita, right? Because at the end you already knew, but before getting to that scene, we were watching the first 5 minutes. If you were to tell somebody some level of advice, some level of something to get you to the process that you're at now faster, what would you tell them?
If I had a few minutes of their time to let them know before they watch a movie as great as Alita, I would just let them know to watch the movie with an open mind, and an open mind big enough that you can step into the director's role and the movie will still be A1.
Damn.
The only way that you can do that is by posing that kind of a question to somebody. Is, if you were the director, how would this movie get 10 stars? It's like, oh, but I'm not a director. But I'm saying it's a what if scenario. What if you were given the powers to finish this movie for the next 95 to 120 minutes? I was like, oh, I don't know this. I don't know this. That's okay. I didn't know what the story was going to look like. I didn't know what the beginning, middle, or end was going to look like. I didn't know what the power ups were. I didn't know I had no idea. All I knew is that I wanted to represent my people, my culture, the Tainos, the sport, and I want to represent as much as I can in this sci-fi environment where there's not that many of us. And if I had that 5 minute, it would just be asking those kind of questions in order to get them to be comfortable enough to say, you know what? I don't have enough information from this movie for 5 minutes, so I'll just create my own. That's what I would do.
God. I mean, again, actually, that's so much better than anything I've ever like come up with that answer. That is phenomenal. It really is true. I can't think of the amount of times I'll watch a movie and it feels perfect to me. It's like, yeah, I could have touched that if I wanted to. Movies like Goodfellas, it's like, yeah, there's nothing I could add or take away that would not mess up the perfect Jenga block of that. But then there are others that I was like, all right, I love this movie, but the third act, it kind of fell apart. That's when you start getting in like really college level thing. But that is the beginning of writing, though. You know what I mean? Everyone, and I do mean everyone, has that one thing. It's like, oh, can you imagine a movie about a dog and a chicken becoming best friends? Everyone has that thought at least once. The difference is the person actually goes like, oh yeah, well, let's find that out.
Exactly. The person that goes out there and does it.
Exactly. So if you're out there and you got your idea and you feel like it, because if you don't feel like writing, I mean, no one's forcing you to do anything in life.
Correct.
And if there is, you know what I'm saying? Find a way out of that. If you can. And just go for it, honestly. Right. I mean, you just got to go for it, especially what we're talking about now as far as representation, everything going on. We're now at that seat where when we were younger, we were obviously powerless, that all the sci-fi that we were watching were primarily dominated by white leads, and
Mhm.
specifically male leads. Every so often you get like an alien movie, be like, oh shit, you know what I mean? Look at that, Ripley's actually pretty cool. But still, it was like thing, and now we're getting a lot better. But now that we're at that helm, now that we're at the driver's seat, now it can be
Exactly.
anything. You know,
Mhm.
Wakanda's just the beginning.
Exactly.
Wait to see what's going on in, like, 2050, right? In Dominican Republic, some real stuff's about to happen. It's about to crack off,
Exactly.
folks. But we are getting to the end of the podcast. My God, phenomenal recording. One of those things that it's just like, oh man, we can't do a little bit longer, 5 minutes, please.
I know, right?
But you got to keep it short just to make sure that, like, there's enough content for you to come back and back and back. I love repeat guests. I love just following up on things to see like the progress that's been happening. So now that we're at this end, I just want to turn it off to you. You know, what else you want to promote? Anything you want to give a line out to? You have your website, you have your podcast, 2 of them, not just one that you're part of, 2 of them. You have your books. What is it?
So you can check me out, nicopengin.com. That's where I have my main website. You can also look for me on Amazon, NICO space PENGIN. It's not Penguin, it's Pengin. I misspelled Penguin when I was signing up for Club Penguin, and that's where it came from. But yeah, anytime that you see me anywhere, make sure to just like, comment, subscribe. Let me know you heard me from here, and who knows, I might throw you a little freebie.
Hey, make sure to check that out. Again, this is the end of the podcast, AR's Tales, aka the ART podcast. I've been AR. This has been Nico. It has been an honor. Phenomenal episode. We will be back next week with another creative, another great conversation, and of course, my big old forehead. Peace out.